Yesterday, you let everyone know, running for governor.
Yes, running for governor.
California.
State of California, man. It's been a long time coming. I wasn't aware of it until about 6 months ago.
Right.
I 100% believe that there's a real chance at reconciling all the brokenness in California. And it's not because of Ryan Tillman. It's because of the man I serve.
Yeah.
I wanted to go out there into this road and bridge that gap between law enforcement and the community. And I recognized that the only way to do that was by showing people the human side of who I was, not just the badge and the gun.
Because I think what you do, it makes it okay for people in your profession to ask questions and to question even the behavior of other people in your profession.
When they saw that the community would come to me, when they saw that people were actually taking my word and saying, hey, look, I trust this guy. I don't like cops, but I'll trust Ryan because he calls it. That's when I realized we started to move the needle.
What's your big message, kind of your general message to, the public? What do you want them to know about police officers? Hello and welcome to the March or Die Show today. Very glad to have you joining us. This is the show where I do my best every episode. I do my best, that's all I can do, to give you the perspectives and information, the principles that you need to march when it would be easier to stay where you are and die. And super excited about our episode today. You can see from the background, not in our normal studio. And man, I've got a great guest on today. Excited to introduce you to him. But before we get there, if you haven't subscribed to the show, please do that right now. Very important that you subscribe. If you're listening, go ahead and subscribe there and then go over to the YouTube channel. We have some great stuff happening on the YouTube right now. And we've been working on that YouTube channel for a while. And finally, it's starting to grow and go. And we're putting great content there. We've had not only this podcast, but also our Hard Questions content is there as well. So if you're interested in some of those things, please check that out. Would love to have you over there. And I mentioned this in our last podcast episode. We are working on building out a platform and continuing to build out a digital platform that will get not only this podcast and our daily devotional and all of our faith content to you, but we're going to start doing a weekly Bible study and other leadership training material as well that will be there. So please keep an eye out for that. That's coming your direction, and really excited about that. But I want to jump into our guest today, Ryan Tillman.
Man, Jeremy,
good to connect with you, man.
Man, thanks for having me, man. It's an honor. This has been on my calendar for about a month, and I've been looking forward to it every single day.
Well, I've been excited about it for a while, and just knowing you and what you do, and we'll talk about what you do and all that you're involved in, but we'll get into this. But then yesterday, as we're recording, so we're about a week out, but as we're recording, yesterday, you let everyone know, running for governor.
Yes, running for governor.
State of California.
State of California, man. Yeah. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of it until about 6 months ago.
Right. Right.
And what I mean by that is like, I didn't really, I was at church and I was just praying, and me and my wife did a fast at the beginning of the year, and I was just asking God to just take me to new levels.
Yeah.
And, after doing the fast, and this is the first time we ever did a no food fast for, we did it for 5 days, which was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But about day 3 into it, we started getting over the hump, and I really was just hearing God. And then I had some words spoken into my life that you're going to be a leader over leaders. And so I was asking God, what does that mean? And he just put on my heart, like, I want you to run for governor. And I hate saying that because so many people say like, oh, God told me.
Yeah. But
like, I've been trying to really seek God, and the only reason I'm in the position I am now is because I really believe that God has had his hand over my life. So, 6 months ago, I decided we're going to run for governor. And then yesterday, it was like this money was burning a hole in my pocket to just tell the world. And so
we're telling them.
We posted our announcement video yesterday online, and here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks for, in spite of that, sitting down with me today and offering up the studio to use. Man, I want to talk about all of that, but I want to talk about your story a little bit. So for people that don't know you, you are currently Chino police officer.
Correct.
CEO and president of Breaking Barriers International.
Correct.
Right?
Breaking Barriers United.
United. It's international. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it is.
But,
it is everywhere.
United. So we'll talk about that. Author, podcast host. And I think I messaged you yesterday. I got my son here, Ethan, who's a police officer. And I love how you take professionally what you do or have done as a police officer, and you talk a lot about that, but then also talk about faith and the integration of that. And you're very open about that. Some people take that position of, I am this professionally and then personally. If we're talking at a coffee shop or something, you'll share your faith story, but you're very open about that as well and lead with that. And so that's really important. And then as we talk about you transitioning to kind of this new role, at least for the next year as you're pursuing this, man, it all follows. It flows. It doesn't seem like a jump. It seems like the next natural step, considering where you've come from, what you've been involved in, and what you hope to do here. So,
man, it's so funny you say that. When I first start telling people about my ambitions for running for political office, especially governor, the response I got was not like, "Are you serious? Like, are you for real?" No, it was more of like, "This is not surprising at all."
That makes sense.
And that for me was almost a confirmation in a sense, like it wasn't a stretch.
Yeah.
And that's when God kind of revealed to me like, hey, look, you've been unconventionally running a campaign for the last 10 years of your life, just in how you've been living your life with your business, with your family, and your walk with Christ. And so, you know, for me, I was like, well, if this is the next step, Lord, I'll be obedient.
Can we talk about, let's start with kind of in the middle, Breaking Barriers United. Talk about what you do there. And then I'd love to go back and hear your faith story and how you got into law enforcement and that. But it's important to understand what that means, what you're working on.
Yeah. So when I was born and raised in Rialto, California, had the opportunity of going to play football at the Division I level at UNLV. And that was in 2005 is when I left. Yeah. At the time, my life was I was going to be an athlete. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to be an athlete. And then once I'm done being an athlete, I'm going to be a Fortune 500 business owner. Like that was my goal. Sure. I end up going into my senior year, my dad gets diagnosed with MS, and you know, it hit our family like a bag of rocks. It was terrible. So that was right around the time that I met my wife. So I moved back home to California, and I was working insurance, and I was working at Abercrombie and Fitch. And I hated my life. Yeah. You know, so then my wife and I get married. We have our first child, Grayson. He's actually in the back too. Yeah. She gets pregnant with Grayson, and I was like, man, I got to get a real job now. So I ended up praying about it. My dad's best friend was like, you should be a police officer. And I was like, absolutely not. Yeah. And the reason why is because I didn't like police. From a cultural standpoint, I was raised that we just don't like police officers. And when I say I was raised, not my parents, but just the cultural dynamic in the area I was in. The second thing was I had some bad interactions with law enforcement. So when that idea came about, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to work for law enforcement.
How was that recommended to you? With that cultural kind of setting, why would someone recommend that to you?
So one of my dad's best friends was a captain for Ontario Police Department at the time. Okay. And he's known me since I was a baby. He was literally my dad's best friend. And he was like, you should be a police officer. Yeah. And I never thought about myself in that light. I only knew law enforcement in the bad experiences that I had and what I saw culturally. Sure. So it was recommended to me. I ran away from it for like 2 years, but my dad's best friend was like trying so hard like to get me to join. Yeah. So finally, I prayed about it and I said, God, if this is what you want me to do, open the door. If not, close the door. And kind of very similar to what I've been doing with this run for office is like open the door, close it. And God literally blew the doors off the hinges and said, hey, look, I made it very clear for me, like, this is what he wanted me to do. So I go through the academy in 2004. I get hired by Chino Police Department in 2013. I go to the academy. I do very well. I graduate number 2 overall in my class. I missed number 1 by like 0.04%. I was so mad at that, by the way. The number 1 guy got a free gun. I was so mad. So, but anyways, so I graduate almost to the top of my class. I go and start the field training program. And I was still like, man, I don't know if this is what I want to do. Yeah. I feel like every time I pulled somebody over, I was messing with them. I just didn't like that feeling. So then fast forward about 6 to 8 months into this, Michael Brown gets killed in Ferguson. And I felt like this man in the middle. As a black guy, I'm like, man, my culture like thinks I'm a sellout, an Uncle Tom, a coon. But as a police officer, a lot of officers don't understand why there's this riffraff between law enforcement and the community. So I had a conversation with my mother. I share this story all the time. And my mother was like, I was thinking about that situation in Ferguson and what you would have done had you been that situation, been that officer. And she said, I came to the reality that you would have probably did the same exact thing, but it's only because you want to come home to your family at the end of the night. Right. You want to come home to your wife, your kids, your mom. And that's when his light bulb went off and said, like, the only reason she sees it this way is because her pumpkin is a police officer. She calls me Pumpkin. Right. And so that kind of opened the door to Breaking Barriers United. That's where the seed was planted. I wanted to go out there into this road and bridge that gap between law enforcement and the community. And I recognized that the only way to do that was by showing people the human side of who I was, not just the badge and the gun. Yeah. And that's when the Breaking Barriers United started. How
were you responded to by your department when you said, okay, I'm gonna do this? Mm-hmm. What was the response?
When I first started the organization, there was a lot of pushback. Yeah. Not from my command staff, but more so my peers. Sure. And I've always said that when it comes to law enforcement, especially when we talk about mental health, we are our own worst enemies sometimes. The enemies, the threats that we deal with outside of the scope of work are dangerous, no doubt about it. But we kill our own. And initially, it felt like I was being attacked. And the reason why is because there's so many people who are like, you need to learn your day job first. You need to spend 5 times. You don't even know your day job yet. But for me, it was like, this is much bigger than my day job. If I'm going to do this job, I want to do this job and know that people want me to show up at their house. If I'm going to do this job, I want my kids to be able to one day say, hey, I want to go into law enforcement. So when I first started, people weren't looking at it that way because it was a very old school traditional mentality. Do your job, keep your head down for 5 years and do your thing. But over time, I started to win people over because they realized that this was not about me brown nosing. This was not about me trying to move up the ranks. This was really about me trying to make this profession better. Right. But it came with some hurdles. And it didn't help that, I got Officer of the Year, 2 years into it. I'm getting beat cop of the quarter. Like
nobody likes you.
Yeah, nobody likes me. Nobody likes me. But I think when people really saw that I had a heart to do it, they started really coming by me. And one of the ways that happened is I started doing breakdowns on police content of videos.
Which is a lot of your content right now.
A lot of my content. In the early days, it was difficult because in the early days, it was easy because it was easy to do a breakdown on, you watching a video, this is what happens. Easy to break that down. It got hard when I start seeing police misconduct or when we did something wrong. And I said, if I really want to bridge divides, if I really want to break barriers,
you have to be honest about it.
I have to be transparent about it all because we're not perfect. Right. But there's not one profession where you have a 100% batting average. So I have to be just as honest when I see bad stuff. So that was difficult because people looked at me like, oh, who are you to Monday morning quarterback? Who are you to do this? But when they saw that the community started responding, when they saw that the community would come to me, when they saw that people were actually taking my word and saying, hey, look, I trust this guy. I don't like cops, but I'll trust Ryan because he calls it. That's when I realized we started to move the needle.
What has your response been from police officers like outside of your department? Just you come in contact with a lot of people. So I think I told you this, or I messaged you this. So, I was going to interview you and I told Ethan, I'm like, I'm going to interview Ryan Tillman. Do you know who that is? Like, oh yeah, I've been following for years.
It's awesome.
Like watching your videos and the breakdowns, a lot of that kind of stuff. So obviously a lot of people are paying attention to what you're doing from other places. Mm-hmm. What is that interaction like? It's
been amazing. Billy's been with me. Billy's been my guy from when we started this. Yeah. Like if there's ever a guy, and it's almost can get emotional about it because Billy's been with me. We've been to the highs, the lows, and we started doing podcasts in my bedroom at my old house. Yeah. And so when we go, I never forget some of the first moments that me and Billy had when I called Billy and I said, bro, I was out and about today, bro, and somebody recognized us for the podcast. And then Billy's like, are you for reals? And so I didn't realize that we started to make that massive of an impact. And then I started traveling for business. I started speaking all over the place. Yeah. And when I'm in New Jersey, when I'm in Dallas, when I'm like in Sacramento and I was in Sacramento 2 months ago and cops on patrol get out, take a picture with me. Like, that's when I realized, like, man, like we are literally making an impact around the world. Like I've had people from Brazil hit me up, South Africa. I was like, I didn't even know y'all have police agencies in South Africa.
That's why you need to go Breaking Barriers International. So
exactly. It, right? There it is.
Because I think what you do, it makes it okay for people in your profession to ask questions. Mm-hmm. And to question even the behavior of other people in your profession. Mm-hmm. But then you've got so many videos where it's you talking to teenagers or talking to kids at schools. How have you been received there? Because you're talking to kids that typically would not have a conversation with police officers most of the time,
yes. Right? That has been probably one of the most impactful work that I've done. I didn't like cops, I told you. So I knew, because in my mind, when I was growing up, I had this image of what cops was or who they were. As I started getting older, when I became a police officer, I was like, man, I want to do this different. I want to be me. Like, I don't ever want the badge to become this big, my gun to become this big. That was advice I got early on. And I kept that true to myself as I speak to kids. So when I show up to speak to kids, I'm in, my Jordans, my hat. That's just me. And I'm usually typically not, when I first started the work, I was actually doing a presentation where I was bridging that gap between law enforcement and the community. So I was dispelling a lot of myths. But then that evolved into me doing work about mental health, mental illness, drug abuse, substance abuse, you name it. And those kids, like, seeing the messages that they send me, like, they come broken, they come hurt, but then I give them hope, I inspire them. To me, that is, like, you cannot put a price tag on that type of thing, because it's changing and reshaping the way they envision not just police, but life.
What would your message be to a young police officer who's getting started? He's not jaded yet. he's not all cynical yet, right? What's your advice to him as he's interacting with people in the community?
So I have a few things that I'd say to that. Number one is, don't let this badge and this profession become your identity. Yeah. It's easy to do, though. Very, very easy to do. I mean, think about it. When you get a badge and when you get all this power, like, if that power goes unguarded, it's a very dangerous thing. You know, they say when people get a lot of money, it only enhances the person you already were. Right. I look at policing very similar. When you get this position where you can have a lot of power, if it goes unchecked or unguarded, you could become somebody that you're not. So number one, as I say, you have to have some faith component to who you are. I always say I'm a firm believer in Jesus Christ. Yeah. That's who I follow. And that's the only way I was going to do this job or could do this job. So you have to have a level of spirituality beyond you, because that is what will keep you in check. Right. You have to have a level of accountability. I always tell people that me and my wife, our marriage would not work if we didn't have Christ at the center of it. Yeah. And that's only because, like, think about it. I mean, you're married. I've been married for 13 years. There's arguments where I don't want to concede. There's arguments where I'm like, I know I'm right.
I'm right on all of my arguments. Yeah. There's not one argument I want to concede.
Yeah, we all, exactly. In all of our mind, that's how we feel. But when you have Christ at the center of it, Christ gives you that accountability and says, hey, look, you know, it's not about you being right. It's about working this out. So to the new officers, I would say is make sure you have an accountability system set in place. The second thing I would be is, you're no better than anybody. As a matter of fact, you are a servant first. Right. And the last thing I would say is, don't ever let this job change the person you are. Like, remember why you got into it. When I go and talk to cops, I'm actually talking at a gang conference in a couple weeks. One of the things I always tell them is, I said, are you the same person that sat in the interview chair 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago now? Yep. And usually the answer to that is no. Yeah. So then I always say, well, we have to diagnose the problem. We have to go figure out what changed. For me, I always found a way to stay connected to the people I served. And I always realized, and I tell this to them, I said, what type of officer do you want showing up at your door when you have to call 911? Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you have to dial 911. Yeah. Be that officer you want to show up at your door when you have to dial 911. Yeah.
It's funny. So just last night, my 17-year-old daughter got in a car accident.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and it was as good as a car accident can be, right? Yeah. But she called us. We went over there, and there were a couple police officers there, and the CHP officer that was there was super kind, very professional, very helpful. She didn't know what to do, right? And so just watching him interact with her, I'm like, this is the kind of guy you want showing up to something like this, right? And it's just, nothing special, I guess, but very kind. So you think about how, and people say this often, a police officer shows up on a person's probably their worst day or one of their worst days, right? And for my daughter yesterday, that was one of her worst days, right? Because her airbag's deployed and she didn't know what to do. She's on the side of the road.
That's terrible.
But she's got people there that helped her and took care of her. Well, that could have been a very different situation if someone had showed up that wasn't that way.
Yes.
But one of the questions that comes to my mind when particularly I hear, you talk about the community and, bridging that barrier and all those things is, all right, law enforcement is very, very difficult, and you deal with some very difficult people that need to be thrown on the ground and dragged off to jail. And people pull guns and do all kinds of stuff. How do you balance that? Yes. Like in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit, how do you balance that? How do you escalate that from like, hey, I'm here to serve, I'm here to help. I want to be the guy I hope would show up if my daughter's on the side of the road, but also if things go sideways, I can be that guy too.
That's a great question. I mean, obviously it starts well before the interaction. You have to make sure your heart is in check before the interaction. When I did the speech a while back, I did this example where I put a sponge over this container and I poured, soda into the sponge. And it just kept soaking it up, soaking it up. And then I squeezed the sponge, and I said the soda represents the garbage. We all know that soda is really not good for you. especially Coke. It's one of the worst. You know, the things it does internally to your body.
So good.
It does taste good,
so good,
but it's so bad for you. And I said, what happens to a lot of young cops and cops in general is we get all this negative stuff that starts to fill up like a sponge. And then over time, you start to get squeezed. I mean, your boss puts pressure on you. You know, then you see political pressures. And then you go on a call and then some guy just goes, you know, he's cussing at you and then you're mad. And then you have the one incident that literally pressures you so hard, it squeezes you so hard, and all the stuff that was inside now comes out. So we have to flip that, and we have to say, what are we filling our minds with before these things happen? Yeah. Are you filling your mind with positive stuff? Are you reading good stuff? Are you reading the Bible? Are you reading, you know, are you surrounding yourself? Are you listening to good podcasts? Are you listening to this podcast? Right. Are you listening? Yeah. Do you have good friends? Do you have toxic friends? Like, you have to do a self-assessment of yourself. And so as you start to fill your mind, your heart with those things, when those critical incidents come and you are squeezed, when you squeeze the sponge in its water, something that's pure, it's in its purest form, it's the best thing for you, that's what will come out. Yeah. But I also recognize, though, too, we're very equally human. And that's where your surrounding cast, your support cast is very important. So if you and I were partners, I would have to know, like, hey, look, this is not like Jeremy, like, I got to pull you back from this. Those are things that we have to practice. Yeah. And I tell that to the general population because I'm like, it's easier said than done to say you're going to pull your partner off of something. Yeah. Very easier said than done. Yeah. So for police departments, you have to train those things. Because when you're in the heat of the moment, I've had some very, very humanistic moments. Yeah. I'll never forget. I'm gonna tell on myself right now, but I'll never forget this. Years ago, I was doing a search of this guy for drugs, and we arrested him. I can't remember what we arrested. Well, actually, we arrested him for drugs. So then I'm searching. I was like, "Hey, man, do you have any other drugs that are going to be on your person?" Yeah. And he was like, "Oh yeah, man, I got a pipe. It's inside my pants." I'm like, "Okay, great." So he's already handcuffed. So mind you, this guy, his teeth are all rotten, just very disgusting. Yeah. He's a homeless guy. No, you know, not judging him, but he was not the best person. So he's like, "Yeah, it's in my pants." I said, "Hey, I'm gonna go in your pants, take the pipe out," because I told him, I said, "Hey, if you get down to the jail, it's gonna be a felony, the whole 9 yards." So as I'm searching this guy, I have my gloves on. I go and I reach down into his pants, and he like jumps like and does like this with his teeth towards me. So I push him back. And I was like, what the? And I never usually cuss. Never cuss, I'm telling myself. But I was like, what the F are you doing? Yeah. I lost it. Because in my mind, like, if you bite me, you're going to give me every communicable disease that you have. Like, my wife is not going to want to kiss me on the lips anymore. Like, I'm going to bring this home. Yeah. That's what went through my mind in an instant. Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, officer, I'm sorry." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I was actually trying to help you out. I was trying to grab my shirt with my teeth so you can go into my pants and grab the pipe out." Yeah. And it was a humbling experience for me because I'm like, dang, like, I literally almost snapped. So I say that to say is, like, we're all human. We all make mistakes. I'm not perfect. But we have to be prepared for situations as much as we can before they happen. Yeah. Because you don't know what's going to happen when you are pushed to the limit. Yeah. And also having that support staff to see you. If you get off track a little bit, hey, pull them back. Because it's way more important that I save you than to let you go off this deep end because for the sake of I didn't want to, take any criticism from my partners. Yeah.
What's your big message, kind of your general message to, the public? What do you want them to know about police officers?
I want the public to know about police officers that, number one, we're not all in the same. I think everybody thinks we're robotic. Everybody thinks we're the same. Everybody thinks we train the same. We don't. Yeah. Traveling across the country and being able to do this work, I've gone to some police agencies and I'm not going to say it, I'm not going to say names, but I'm like, how the heck do you have a police agency? Like, who gave you these police powers? But the sad thing is like, if they go out there and they do something corrupt or bad, we all get painted in the same. It reflects on everybody. So I always tell people, we're not all one and the same. Number one, because we all train different. Number two is the badge on my chest is different than the badge on their chest. The third thing is that we are not all the same because just as people, we are different. Right. Like, you and I perceive threats differently. You and I perceive things differently. Yep. So that makes every single one of us different. The last thing I would say to the public is have a level of grace and compassion. And before you're quick to jump to a conclusion about why an officer did what they did, try to gather as much context and facts as you can before you make that assumption. We have a really cool series on YouTube called Switched, where we switch the roles between law enforcement and civilians. I've had celebrities on, I've had Terry Crews on, everybody, and it's fun. One of the biggest moments that me and Billy have shared throughout the years when we do that is when you see the light bulb go off and people that were naysayers of cops are all of a sudden like, wow, like this was mind blowing. Like
That's really hard.
That was really hard. Yeah. Like my best friend, Markel Martin, good dude. He was not a fan of police officers. He's still not pro police. But even he was like, man, I got one word for you guys, respect. After it was all said, and mind you, this is all fake. Yeah. So what we did for them is we were able to let them see a different side of law enforcement, and it allowed him to say, you know what, before me jumping to conclusions from here on out, I'm going to try to give a little bit more context, give you the benefit of the doubt before I make an assumption.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, there's a lot, I'd love to dive into all of it, but just for time.
Of course.
Talk about your faith story.
So my faith story is a good one. I grew up in a Catholic home. Yeah. My mom and dad, they knew that faith was important, 100%. Like when we were younger, we went to church on Sunday, Catholic church. And I always knew that faith was an important component of my life. But as I started getting older, I started realizing that as a Catholic, I didn't really have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I didn't understand why I had to go to the priest to confess my sins. Yeah. I didn't understand why I had to say all these Virgin Marys all the time. And this is no knock on anybody. This is just my own personal journey. So I'm not knocking anybody for their belief system whatsoever. This is my personal journey. And I remember when I went to college in Las Vegas, of all places, Sin City, like of all places.
That's where you want to send your 18-year-old.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, and as much as I love UNLV, and I'm I love UNLV. Oh man, you know, if my kids said they want to go to UNLV, I'd be so torn because I'm like, man, I love that school, but I know what it comes with. But I'm in Vegas. I'm in Vegas. And when I'm going to school, I mean, I'm partying, I'm up all the time, and my son is over here like, dang, Dad, I didn't realize you was partying. But I'm, going to school, and I remember there was like this void in my life, and I didn't know what the void was. Yeah. I knew it was something spiritual, but I didn't know what it was. So Randall Cunningham, I'm not sure if you remember Randall Cunningham, the old quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings. Randall Cunningham is an alumni for UNLV, and so he comes out to practice every now and then just to check us out. So I got a small relationship with him at the time, and he ends up saying, hey, you want to come to church on Sunday?
No kidding.
So I was like, all right, cool, I'll come to church. And I was like, no problem. So I didn't realize that he was a pastor of the church out there. So I go to his church, Remnant Ministries. In Las Vegas. Okay. I go to his church, Remnant Ministries. So I loved it. And it helped that, after church, they sold chicken and waffles in the foyer. and those chicken and waffles were bomb, like the best chicken and waffles I ever had. So I kept coming back. So one day I wake up, I'm asleep. And I went out the night before. So I'm out the night before. Randall calls me. He's like, hey, what you up to, buddy? I was like, oh, nothing. Just waking up, He was like, hey, you want to get baptized today? I was like, wasn't planning on it. But he was like, man, come get baptized. So this was in 2007. Wow. April 2007. So I go down. They do the baptisms at his house. And I remember going down and coming up out of that water. I was like, man, like I just got the chills. Like I could really feel the Holy Spirit just come upon my life. And from that day forward, I really set out to live a life for Christ. Now, I will say I did backslide. But you'd be
lying if you said otherwise.
I'd be lying if I wasn't. But I knew what I was supposed to be doing. And it was when I graduated from college and me and my wife were dating, her and I had broken up for like 3 or 4 months because it just wasn't working. But in that time, that's where I rededicated my life to serving God. This was probably like 5 or 6 years after that. Yeah. And I really said, Lord, I want to just devote my everything to serving you. Yeah. I want to live for you. And my wife, in her time, she was raised in a Christian home and she was walking away from the Lord. And the Lord was working on her at that same time too. So she rededicated her life. We rekindled and we got back together. But I just realized, I said, man, God is he is why I live. Everything I do, I want to glorify him. Yeah. And then what's very interesting about Randall real quick is like the same jacuzzi that I was baptized in was the same jacuzzi that his 2-year-old son drowned in. Mm. And this was a couple years after. And I'll never forget that a week after his 2-year-old drowned in that jacuzzi, he gets up there and gives a sermon about how his son Christian was in paradise, and to see a man come back from something so tragic like that, I knew like, man, there is nothing but God. Like God has to exist.
This is real.
This is real.
Yeah.
And since then, I have had so many vivid moments where I've encountered God and I knew God was over my life.
Yeah.
When it was getting into law enforcement, the moment I pulled into the Chino Police Department parking lot, I had this feeling come over me like, this is where you belong.
Yeah.
When I was in my career, there were certain moments, pivotal moments that God had his hand over my life, even so much so. And I don't know if you've watched the whole live that I did yesterday, but
I did.
Recently, when I talked about the story of Gideon, and I'll share that, you mind if I share the story?
Please.
Like 4 weeks ago, I just woke up with this sense of anxiety over my chest. Like, man, you're getting ready to run for the biggest office next to President of the United States. And like, wondering if this is what God wants me to do. And so I'm like, I kept saying, like, God, tell me if this is what you want me to do, tell me. If not, like, close the door. So I woke up this morning and God just said, hey, I want you to go study about Gideon. So I've read about Gideon before, but I never really studied about Gideon. And so when I study about Gideon, I see that God gives him a plan. God tells Gideon, I want you to go take these towns back and I want you to create an army. And Gideon is like unsure of himself. So Gideon asks God for a clear sign. And the first sign Gideon gets, it's unmistakable. Like, he gives an offering and it's fire consumes it, but it doesn't burn. So Gideon gets a clear as day sign from God. This is what I want you to do. But Gideon, being fully human, still says, hey, God, can you give me another sign? So Gideon says, hey, look, I might get this out of order, but just bear with me. But Gideon says, all right, I'm going to put this fleece outside. And if the fleece when I wake up tomorrow, if the fleece is not covered in dew, but there's dew all around it, then I'll know. So sure enough, Gideon wakes up the next morning. He goes outside. The fleece is not covered with dew, but there's dew all around it. So Gideon is like, all right, cool, like, great. So then Gideon, still being fully human, does what all humans do. God, can you give me another sign? So he says, this time, when I wake up tomorrow morning, if there's dew on the fleece and there's no dew on the ground, then I'll know. Sure enough, Gideon goes to bed. He wakes up, dew on the fleece, nothing around it. So Gideon's like, all right, great, I got it. So then fast forward, Gideon gets all these signs. God still knew Gideon's heart, and he still knew that he was wavering a little bit. So God says, hey, Gideon, I want you to go down to the camp, and I'm going to do something for you. So Gideon goes down to the camp with his partner, and he overhears the soldiers of the camp that are getting ready to invade, like, man, I had this dream last night, and we're going to basically get taken over, and it's not going to be pretty. So Gideon comes back to the camp, and Gideon's like, man, like, they already afraid of us. Like, we're good. Like, now he's feeling confident. So I walked away from that with this revelation that you have not because you ask not. It's okay to ask me for a sign that this is what you're supposed to do. So I wrote down in my journal, I said, God, give me a sign. Tell me this is what you want me to do. Tell me this is where you want me to go. Well, the next day I go speak at a school, and I'm speaking and I'm doing my thing. I get off the stage as one kid comes up to me and he's like, hey man, Ryan, thank you so much for coming. You really spoke to my heart. You really opened my mind to so much. And I was like, oh man, no problem. I said, if you don't mind me asking, man, what's your name? He's like, oh man, I'm Gideon. I said, no way. My eyes lit up. He was like, yeah, I know my name is biblical. I said, bro, I'm not tripping because your name is biblical. I'm tripping because you're an answered sign from God. You're an answered sign from God. And I walked away from that just thinking like, number one is I've never met a Gideon in my life.
Never met one.
I've never met a Gideon. So it was unmistakable. But two, I was just like, man, like, God, like you even have your hand in this. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I literally don't. I don't know what next year looks like. But my goal is just being obedient in every step I take for God, and that he gets all the glory in whatever I do.
And that's the Christian life, right? We get so wrapped up in what we define as success or how we measure success and all these things. Success is pursuing God. That's success. And you've been successful if you've done that. And what I like about your story, so we start with, breaking barriers united. This is what you're trying to do. It really is, if I can put it in these terms, a ministry of reconciliation. It's bringing two sides to a common understanding of truth. Right? Well, you couple that with your faith story, and when we look at, to me, Christianity is a ministry of reconciliation. It's reconciling the broken and the lost to a holy God. I mean, that's what Christ came to do. It was reconciling to God. And that should be the outflow of the Christian life. And you've been walking that. And so to then say, all right, the next step is for me to work in this area of reconciling, breaking down walls between these two sides on a larger scale, it's really not different than your Christian life, the work that you've been doing. It's just a continuation of the same thing. And what people, I think, misunderstand about that sometimes, and correct me on any of this, but I think what people sometimes think that means is, well, you're saying that nothing's really important. We all just need to get along. That's not reconciliation.
No.
Reconciliation is saying, hey, we both have things to learn. There is truth. Mm-hmm. We need to put aside whatever is keeping us from getting to that truth.
Correct.
But sometimes you need a voice or voices that will come together and say, look, this is the truth. How do we get each of you to the place where you can agree on that?
You make so many good points with that statement. And when I have those kind of discussions, I just had one with a family member actually recently who's on the opposite side of where I'm at. And I said, look, because they live a lifestyle that I don't necessarily agree with. And I said, for me, I get my truth from the Bible. That's what's true for me.
Right.
And just because you don't agree doesn't necessarily mean that we can have conflicting relationship with each other. Right. And I said, you have to understand something. I'm not perfect. I'm not on a pedestal. As a matter of fact, I fail daily. Yeah. I think it was the great Billy Graham that said, I sinned on my way over here when I saw the man asking for food and I drove right by him. Yeah. Like we all sin. Yeah. Sin is in the eyes of God, not one sin is greater than the other. Where we have to get to is we have to get to a place where we can learn to agree to disagree. And I recognize that everybody is not going to think how I think. Right. Everybody's not going to come to the same place. But it doesn't mean that we can't coexist with one another. And so when I talk about politics and when I talk about getting into this world, how do we bring these two worlds together and learn to agree to disagree? Yeah. And I learned this is probably in my marriage, one of the most valuable lessons I've learned through my marriage. When I got married, I realized that we are not going to agree on everything. Right. Well, I went to a marriage class early on when we was a premarital class. And one of the things that's always stood out to me, it's so funny. He says, when a woman says that she has nothing to wear, it means something completely different than when a man says, I have nothing to wear. When a woman says she has nothing to wear, it means she has nothing new to wear. When a man says he has nothing to wear, it means he has nothing clean to wear. Right. Both are very, very true statements, but different. Sure. So why I say that is because I've had to learn that we have to compromise, we have to agree to disagree, but you can do it without having to compromise who you are, without having to bend the need to compromise what God has called you to be and who he's created you to be. I wrote a book called Happy Eyes, and it's all premised on becoming all things to all people without compromising who you are. Yeah. And it's centered around truth. And I think if truth is the barometer of where we need to go, then we can all eventually get there sometimes. But everybody has a different journey, and I'm not going to judge people. Right. I could judge the sin, but I'm not going to judge the person. I need to love the person. I need to be empathetic to the person. I need to be respectful to the person, but not necessarily have to agree with the sin that for me comes from the Bible.
And it's, it's interesting because truth should always be the standard. And, sometimes truth is broken down into like big T and little t truth, right? There's universal truth given to us by God. Mm-hmm. That doesn't change whether you agree with it or don't agree with it. Doesn't matter. It's God's truth.
It's his truth.
But then there is what we would call maybe relative truth. It's true because of our environment or true because of culture or, whatever. And particularly when we're looking at a political system, a lot of the truth we're talking about would be that relative truth.
You're so right.
This is true because that's math, right? This is how math works. Mm-hmm. If people don't have jobs, they can't buy things. And if they can't buy things in the economy and
correct.
We could talk about all of that, but what has happened in California particularly, I think in politics generally, but in California, very specifically, I grew up here. I love California. My heart breaks for California. Mm-hmm. And even you started off one of your videos yesterday is, hey, if you're gone, come back. Like we're going to create a place where you want to come back to, right? But we're fighting over stuff that is not big T or little t truth. It's, well, my side says, or your side says, or like, get out a calculator. Let's just look at what is true.
Yes.
And let's just talk about that.
Let me give you a good example of this. So years ago, I had there was a documentary made on me. And in the documentary, I said something to the effect of there's a real fear in the black community of police. And there were some partners of mine that didn't like that statement.
Yeah.
Because in their mind, why is there a real fear when the odds of you dying by medical malpractice, car accident, something else is way more likely to kill you than the police? And what they were saying is true on every level.
Yeah.
But to your point, there was this relative truth for the black community.
Right.
When all you see in your echo chamber is what you perceive to be police brutality, when all you see is what you perceive to be police corruption. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but it is so amplified to make it seem like that is all that occurs. Yeah. When you see a white officer shooting a black guy, what happens is it creates this legitimate fear for some people in the black community, in other minority communities, that even though we know as a police officer, even though I know it's not true, it's relatively true to them.
Right. Well, you can say something shouldn't be true, but it might still also be true.
Correct. And so that's why I said, hey, look, I'm saying that because in order for me to bridge that gap, in order for me to win people over, I have to be able to get on their level. It doesn't mean I bend the truth. Because when I talk to them, I tell them the statistics. One of the things I always tell them is, do you realize the third leading cause of death is medical malpractice?
Sure.
When I tell you that one of the leading causes of death is more likely to kill you from the fast food chain than it is the police officer. When I say these things, those are true, but they won't even hear that information until I don't acknowledge what may be perceived to be true to them. And when you play this game of chess and not checkers, you start making way more strides than you do trying to argue on relative truth sometimes.
So do you think there is an opportunity, and this is a real question from a California guy. Do you think there is an opportunity to really reconcile a lot of the brokenness that's in California right now?
I 100% believe that there's a real chance at reconciling all the brokenness in California. And it's not because of Ryan Tillman. It's because of the man I serve. Going back to that Gideon story, I mean, Gideon actually gets his army up to 1,000 people. And God says, hey, go and cut it down to 300. And Gideon is like, why the heck would I cut this army down to 300? He says, because when you get the victory, I want people to say that I'm the one that did this, not you. So I truly believe that we have a unique opportunity. We've been seeing it. One of the most interesting dynamics that's going on in our state right now is that I think people are getting tired of the politics. They're getting tired of the left and the right.
Exhausted, I think.
They're getting exhausted. And I think people want somebody that has their heart in mind, that's not trying to give you a political agenda for the sake of winning a vote. They want somebody that can understand and relate to groceries being high at the grocery. I mean, and when I say that, I'm saying that not because I live in some multi-million-dollar house. I'm saying that because I went to Sprouts the other day and I was like, no, actually, I wasn't even at Sprouts. I was at the Stater Brothers. And I had literally 6 items on the belt and it was like $100. I was like,
no, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So when I'm talking about these political issues, I'm talking because I know what it's like. When I'm talking about public safety, I know what it's like because I've been on the streets for the last 12 years, knowing exactly what's going on, what's hurting our community. So this has nothing to do with being a Democrat. This has nothing to do with being a Republican. It has nothing to do with about being an independent. This has everything to do with saying, hey, look, let's all get on the same team so we can improve all of our lives.
It's recognizing the realities that actually exist in California.
It's
saying what can we do about that?
Of the world, not even the United States. What's going on in California. Let's focus on that. I mean, California is one of the most beautiful states in this world. I always say nobody ever leaves California because it's an ugly state. Right. Or because they don't like the weather. If anything, people want to come here. So we have everything at our hands. We have all the resources at our hands. It just needs the right leadership.
Leadership is so important. I talk to people, all over the country as well. And when they find out I'm from California, it's always like,
oh man, they roll their eyes.
California, you gotta get out of there.
What are you bringing here?
I always have to say, look, I don't agree with the politics of California, but I love California. My family's in California. I grew up in California. You go through all the things, you know, and it's a beautiful state. And there's so much to do, but you can't deny things like, high food costs and crime and homelessness and a lot of the things you outlined, yesterday as you were talking about this. One of the areas that I really appreciated you talking about was the family, and if we can incentivize families
Yes.
then so many of these other issues, they will deal with themselves.
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up. This is out of all of my initiatives.
And I think this transcends California. This is the answer to so many of the problems that we have.
Yes. This is probably one of my most exciting initiatives. I have three exciting initiatives. One is cryptocurrency. One is talking about, all my crypto people out there. The other one is talking about being smarter on redemption with criminals. And we can talk about that later. But this third one is probably my favorite, which is the Family First Initiative. And the reason why it's so exciting is I feel like we have incentivized people to be on government assistance through EBT. We've incentivized people to go out and get abortions, as opposed to just educating people about the dangers of having sex, the dangers of what happens when you're out there just sleeping with everybody. We are incentivizing people just go out and get an abortion and not realizing the trauma that comes with that as well. So the Family First Initiative is let's incentivize people to stay together and work things out in their marriage. It has statistically been proven that when families stay together, the odds of incarceration go down. When families stay together, the odds of your kids going out there and committing crime goes down. People don't realize that in California, on average, is about per inmate is around 100. It costs the state about $107,000 per inmate. And we have around 99,000 inmates or something like that. Some crazy number throughout the state of California. So if we focused on the family, if we incentivized families to work it out, if we educated people and gave them resources about therapy or, whatever things they can do to work on their marriage, then not only will you win as a couple, but you're going to see the byproducts through your kids. We will break generational curses. So how do we do that? I truly believe that the money that we're spending on all these people that are incarcerated can now come back to the people's pocket, and we can now give you tax breaks and tax incentives. So if you're married for 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, you get different tax incentives for staying together. Now, I do recognize that people will game the system. People will be living in that, but we have to realize that already happens.
It's happening in all the other areas. It already happens in
all the other areas. So I'd rather at least be on the proactive side.
That's good.
And saying, man, we want you guys to work it out. And this is coming from somebody. I've been married for 13 years. We've been together 15 years. And me and my wife will tell you, like, our marriage has not always been peaches and roses, but it is so worth the fight. It is so worth to try to stay together. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't go out there and get divorced. I'm not saying that people can't do it. What I'm saying is let's try the first thing. Let's actually try to work it out first.
Yeah, let's incentivize God's plan for society and culture, right?
Why not? It's a common sense thing. I mean, even if you remove God's plan, I mean, obviously I come back to God's plan. That's where it's inspired from. But let's say you're not a Christian. Let's say you don't believe in Jesus Christ. Even if you remove that, just the morality side of it, it makes sense. Yeah,
it makes sense. And I really do believe, we were talking about this a little bit on the way over here today. I believe that's the answer for so many of the issues is parents not only being together, but then training their children, keeping their, why does the government have to teach children how to become productive adults or deal with adults who weren't taught as children? If the family would do that, it deals with so many issues.
Correct.
That's good. Man, we could talk all day. I'd love to, but I know you've got things to do.
No, man, I could literally go all day for sure. And I have time, but man, this has been so great. I mean, I really truly believe in the work that you guys are doing, especially with our law enforcement officers, our military personnel. It really is the backbone of this country. And I say that, simply because if you don't have first responders, if you don't have our military, the peace that we have, we wouldn't have.
No, that's right. That's exactly right. That is the structure we need. And I appreciate that. And I'm thankful for you, thankful for your voice. And again, I mentioned this yesterday, but speaking on the topics that you do from the place that you do, that's a voice that so many people need to hear. And now I'm excited to see what happens next.
Man, it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be interesting. So if you guys are watching this podcast, do me a favor. I hate saying this because it sounds so cliche, but I do want to earn your vote.
Yeah.
I want to earn your vote. I want to earn your vote because I truly believe this is not me at the helm. It's somebody that I follow at the helm. Yeah. And this is not me that's going to get it done. It takes a team. It takes all of us uniting. Somebody asked the question, are you willing to get out of this race to get behind somebody else?
Yes.
I recognize that the running for governor in California, it's almost like the art of war.
Sure.
And sometimes in order to win the war, you have to lose a couple battles. And I've already made the decision that at some point in time, if for whatever reason our campaign were to stall out, momentum were to stall out, I have no problem getting behind a candidate that I believe can get us to where we want to go, because it's about winning the war, not the battle.
Sure.
However, at this point in time, I truly believe that I am the person that is equipped to win the war. Yeah. You need somebody that can have a broader appeal to everybody, that can have the voice for everybody, that can have a heart for everybody, that can be empathetic for everybody. Yeah. And as I look at the candidate pool, I'm not knocking any of the other candidates in the pool. Everybody's free to run their race. And one of the things that we're going to do differently is I don't plan on running any smear campaigns, because it's never been in my MO. But if we really want to win the war, and the war is not Republican versus Democrat or Democrat versus Republican, the war is making sure that all Californians can live a great quality of life. If that's what the war we want to fight, we need to make sure we get behind the candidate who can get it done.
You made this point yesterday too, and this is, I think, an important point. This is not a political podcast, but if you don't live in California, it still is beneficial to you, wherever you live, to have good governance in California. One of the largest economies in the world.
It's in the best interest.
California impacts every other state in the United States, whether we like to admit it or not, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, everything from shipping, production, manufacturing, agriculture, these are issues that impact the rest of the country. So this is something that people across the country need to be concerned about.
It's in the best interest. I've been saying that from day one. I know this because, again, you and I see in our travels. Yeah. For whatever reason, California dictates a lot of what happens, from policy to production. And so it's in the best interest of everybody in the country to have a great leader in California, because if you have a great leader in California, then the rest of the country now succeeds.
That's good.
And so for all you guys that are mad that, we've sent a lot of residents to your places, don't worry. Yeah. We're going to go back and pick them back up. We're going to bring them back. We'll send them back. I'll handle it. Guys. Don't worry about it. But yeah, thank you so much for giving me this platform, man. This has been awesome. This has been amazing.
Thank you, man. And real quick, so you have a podcast, a lot of social media stuff. Where do you want people to follow you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of places. If you want to listen to our podcast, you can find our podcast at The Ryan Tillman Show on Apple, iTunes, Spotify. If you want to follow us on YouTube, Breaking Barriers United. Instagram is Breaking Barriers United. And then now our new political campaign page is Ryan Tillman 26, I believe. Or no, Ryan Tillman for governor. I got to ask I'll tell you right now. Sorry, this is me being, but yeah, I think it's Ryan Tillman for governor. I got too many accounts. I got all the accounts. I got 50 million.
Go to any of the accounts, you'll find it.
It's Tillman for governor. Tillman for governor on Instagram. There it is. And Tillman26.com. That's actually our official campaign page. So Tillman26.com. Please go on there. Look at the issues. And when I say I want you to earn my vote, I don't want you to just earn my vote because you think I sounded good on a podcast, hopefully. But I want you to go and look at the issues that I'm running on. Look at what I stand on. And if you feel like, hey, this is somebody you can get behind, you can donate on there. We need as many volunteers as we can get your official merchandise. Yeah. Yep. The merchandise is cool. I said this, everything that we do is not going to be political. Yeah. Even our video. Yeah. What do you think about the video, by the way, that we posted?
I had a lot of thoughts. I thought it was great. And one of my thoughts was, I've never seen anyone running for office that said, all right, this is live. Let me know if you have a question and I'll answer it right now.
Oh, wow.
And you were doing that. I mean, it's very accessible. I thought it was great.
Wow, that's awesome. So everything that we do is going to be unconventional. So Tillman26.com and get plugged in today.
Yeah, awesome. Man, I really appreciate it.
Jeremy, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for the work. And if you guys ever need me, you know where to find me.
Yeah, know where to find you. All right. For those of you listening, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And man, if I could urge you to do one thing, go to the YouTube channel. We're growing there. A lot of good things happening and a lot of good things coming your way as we're building out a content platform that extends beyond the work that we do at Mighty Oaks. For those of you that follow Mighty Oaks, veterans, service members, first responders, spouses, and families, and we're grateful for that. But we're asked all the time, what do you do for people that haven't served in the military, aren't in the first responder community? And we're continuing to grow that out for you. So please check that out. Appreciate it. Talk to you next time.